Hi, everyone, and welcome to our annual America's Best Urban Schools Symposium. My name is Jose Iniguez, and I serve as an executive coach here at the National Center for Urban School Transformation, or INCUS, as we're commonly known. It's a pleasure to introduce to you today one of our 2015 award-winning schools, O'Farrell Charter School, located in Southeast San Diego here in California. I realize not all of you are in California, but if you're unfamiliar with California, San Diego is south at the southmost point. Led by Principal Brian Rainey, the O'Farrell Charter School has achieved impressive results in the area of equity and excellence. To do this, O'Farrell Charter School has focused on building a structure that supports their vision, the quality of curriculum and instruction, or as Brian says, awesome teachers, and fostering a culture of excellence and belonging. With us today is the high school principal of the O'Farrell Charter School, Brian Rainey, and Vice Principal Katy Leenerts. Thank you both for being here today and for sharing your story.
Hello, my name is Brian Rainey. I am the principal here at the O'Farrell High School, and this is my vice principal, Katy Leenerts.
Hi.
A little bit about O'Farrell. O'Farrell has been around for well over 20 years. For a long time, though, we were both just a middle school and an arm of the district charter, and so we were pretty attached to the district. But about 10 years ago, we broke away and became a fully independent 501c3 nonprofit organization and an independent charter. And a few years after that, we decided to expand. Our community had been asking for a ninth grade. And so we did that. We added a ninth grade. And we were really successful in that ninth grade. We were able to give them a good foundation before they headed off to the big high schools around us. And we did that because we had been watching what happened to our students when they left. And we had a lot of kids who, when they first got to us, were having a tough time, and we felt like we turned them into students that were being successful. Then they would leave our school from 8th grade into 9th and would not be successful. And so we built that 9th grade to hopefully give them a good foundation before they went on to whatever high school they're going to go to. After a couple of years of that, our families were beating down the door saying, you've got to build a high school. And so that's what we did. We began to build a high school and an elementary at the same time. But we added a 10th grade, an 11th, and a 12th, and we graduated that first class. We've now graduated, I think it's five classes, with the 6th one a few months away. And we have just become more and more successful, and the kids are awesome and doing great things, and we're super happy with that. So the idea behind our high school was when we watched our kids go off to the other high schools around, one of the things we noticed is that for whatever the intention was, the reality was that really the top 20% or so really got prepared for college. And for the rest, a four-year university was not a possibility. And when I looked around, I saw that the real need was to create a school where every single student was prepared for and could get accepted into and succeed in a four-year university. And so that's what we created. We created a school where every student would get the very best that school had to offer. I grew up myself 3 miles from here, and I went to a area typical district high school, and unfortunately, I didn't have the best experience. I didn't have a great education because I wasn't one of those top 20% that were intrinsically motivated, had parents on top of them, and that wasn't me. And so I fell through the cracks. And when I became a teacher and I came to this school, I decided, why does that have to happen? Why can't a student get the very best education no matter where they are? It shouldn't matter where you come from. And so we created this high school with the idea that it would be a school without cracks. One of the problems, I think, with inner city schools is because of the challenges at home, because of the challenges of economics, that unfortunately there's just a lot of cracks for kids to fall through. They might be a compliant kid, a quiet kid in your class, but they're not getting work done because they've got issues and there's really nobody who understands them. And so we created this school with the idea of a school without cracks, where every kid would be cared for and every kid would have a support network. Really the best of what we did in the middle school, we brought it to our high school. But one of the fundamental values that we have as a school is that every human being, therefore every one of our students, has the same value. And it doesn't matter if they are a compliant 4.0, 4.7 student who does all their work and does the extra credit, makes you feel good about yourself. Or if they're a kid who gets in trouble and they talk back and they're mean, and it doesn't matter. Every single kid has the same value. It doesn't matter what their last name is. It doesn't matter the color of their skin. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter if they have a father at home. They all have the same value. And so they all need to be treated with the same respect, the same compassion, and the same grace. They all need to be treated like they're your own kids. And so that's what we try to do. We try to treat all of our students like they were our own kids. In fact, one of my own kids graduated here a couple of years ago, and I got to practice what I preach. We really try to look at all kids like that as individuals, the way you do your own kids, giving them the best. And that means everything from the best opportunities to being held accountable and not taking excuses, but understanding the troubles and the difficulties and helping them through it. And so that's what we try to do. Some of the honors and things that we've kind of been able to attain, we are listed on the U.S. News and World Report, Best High Schools in America. We are ranked as one of the top high schools in San Diego County. We are ranked in the top 2% of the state of California high schools, and we're ranked in the top 3% of high schools in the United States. We are an AVID national demonstration school. So if you know about AVID, we're a demo school. We're an NCUST award-winning school. Typically, we have 100% graduation rate, but like everybody, we have non-diploma bound kids too. We serve a higher percentage of special ed students than our district around us does. Last year, 73.2% of our seniors were accepted to a four-year university. So we've been trying to push that number up and up and up, and we're at 73% now. From the last test scores that California did, which we didn't have tests last year, I'm sure just about nobody did, but so the year before, our Hispanic students scored in the top 10% of the state, and our African-American students scored in the top 2% of the state in English. So those were English scores. And our math scores, our Hispanic students scored in the top 11% of the state, and our African-American students scored in the top 5% of the state in math. And so when I was asked by Dr. Johnson to do this, he asked, what are the two or three things that you think are the reasons why you're successful? And that's a tough question. There's like a million things, and then there's, I don't know, it's all in the secret sauce, but we nailed down, or at least we narrowed it down to three things: to structure, teachers, and culture. So we're just going to spend a couple of minutes each talking about these things, and hopefully you find it of some value to you, and maybe there's something you can take from it. The first is structure. So we believe that structure should support your vision. So we have a vision of, our vision statement has three things in it. It's about academics, it's excellence in academics, it's strong relationships, teacher-student relationships, and then character development. So our structure supports that. And that's our master schedule. Our master schedule, in order for students to have enough time with their teachers, we have a block schedule. We have an A-B block schedule because studies show that it's the best for students in test scores. We prep by department so that our teachers have enough time to meet together. So all the English team preps together so they can help each other get better and better, because it's part of our expectations for teachers is that they are growing as instructors. So we prep by department. We have something called home base. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And it really is probably the most important thing we do. And when people ask about our success, that's what I point to. And I think it's something that a lot of schools could do some version of. We made sure that all the graduation requirements at our school met what are in California are A through G requirements. So if you graduate from O'Farrell, you qualify to be able to apply to every college in California and really the country. And so that there aren't students graduating who can't go on to a four-year university. So our requirements for graduation are those plus extra. Another thing we do is at the beginning of the end of the year before, when we set the schedule for the year, is we value, even though we push so hard on academics, we value the non-academic days. We call them home-based days. And so we have days built into our schedule where we shut down the school and play with the kids. And that might, sometimes you think, and I've had teachers go, whoa, how am I going to get this in my pacing? I go, look, it's worth it. Human beings bond over work and play. And taking time to have fun together builds school spirit and shared experiences. And those bonds will help you later when you need to get kids to do things that they may not want to do. So we build into our schedule home-based days. We shut down the school and we have an air band competition. It's actually a huge thing. We shut down the school and we have a dodgeball tournament. That's absolutely right. We shut down the school and they throw balls at each other. And then the teachers get in there and they throw balls at teachers. We shut down the school. We have a turkey trot, like old-fashioned turkey trot. And they dress up like elephants from Thanksgiving and they run around. It's ridiculous, but we do that. We have a day where we shut down and we send every kid to a college and they step foot on that college campus and take a tour. And so we put into our schedule these days because they're important. They're important to being a kid, being in a high school, and it's fun and it builds bonds and it's part of the secret sauce. We're a college focused, as I mentioned, high school. And so that means college boards on every classroom wall, a college trip day, like I mentioned. Our buildings are named after universities. We have an entire class that is called career development. Every senior takes it. We don't have a program where kids can leave early their senior year. Our program is full, beginning to end. In fact, there isn't that much choice in our program. And I know for some that's a big deal, but for us, we have a program that when you're a part of, every piece matters. And so senior year, the last class of, I guess would be on Tuesdays and Fridays, is career development. And it's where they apply for college, because in our program, every single student applies for college. It's where they learn resume skills, financial literacy skills. It is where they prepare for life beyond high school.
Sorry.
Go ahead, jump in, please.
Yeah, just to add in there too, we also too, in that career development class, we really try to make the bridge between high school and the future beyond high school, college, and then eventually career. And so we have partnerships with individuals in the community who come and host networking events for our students. We've worked with college alumni panels to just, really just partner our students with people in the outside world and hopefully get them really focused on those next steps.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, we have Avid. I don't think I mentioned in the beginning our demographic too. So we're 98% students of color, and we are about 70%, 75 depends each year, but about 70% free and reduced lunch. So students in poverty, and that's who we serve. The other element of our structure is this thing called home base. So home base, I really believe, is the most important thing we do. And it's something we do in our middle school as well. But our home base, it's the first class every day. It's 25 minutes. And in this class, every student is attached to a teacher. So a teacher picks them up freshman year and takes them through senior year, through graduation. They get to know this student like no one else. And they are responsible for the student. They are the point of contact for the family. All the information we want to push out, we push out through home base. They are the advocate for this student, for their 30 students that they have. They're the cheerleader and the coach. They look after their academics. They're checking their grades. They actually hand out discipline. Home-based teachers will hand out discipline for infractions that students do. Everything short of suspension. When they're up for suspension, they've got to that level, that's when they come to me. But home-based teachers take care of, they really take on a pseudo-parental role with these students. And in there, they build a sense of community, a sense of family. A lot of our students call their home-based teacher mom and dad. They'll even, we have home-based t-shirts where they will wear a shirt that has their teacher's name on it and something they designed. We even have students that'll wear their home-based teacher's face on their shirt. I know this isn't exactly typical behavior of high school students, but that's how bonded they get in their home bases. Katy, in fact, had a home base just a couple of years ago before she stepped out of the class. What else would you add to that, Katy, about home base?
Just to echo what Brian has said here, it really is a special thing, and probably it's what I would attribute to so much of our success here at O'Farrell. I think the real benefit of a home base is that every single student on this campus should have a relationship with a trusted adult. That adult, their home-based teacher, sees them as an individual. They're the first advocate, as Mr. Rainey said. I think that's a really important thing to kind of focus on. I really enjoyed all the experiences I had with my home base, starting with them in 9th grade and continuing on through 12th grade. And definitely, I mean, there are challenges to it, but ultimately we were able to develop a community as a home base. As Mr. Rainey had mentioned before, we take days off of class and students do these, we do air bands, or we do dodgeball, or we do home base Olympics. And for our senior year air band, we actually, the students, they're seniors, trying to get them to do all the planning on their own. And of course, the cliques, even though we're a community, sometimes the cliques just come out, and students were having a really hard time making everything work together. And so we finally got to home base, or we got to air band day, and we were in the theater and we were rehearsing, and nobody was really doing much of anything. And I was pretty frustrated. As a senior home base teacher, I'd put a lot of time and love into these kiddos, and I was I was frustrated that they couldn't sing and dance on stage in a silly way, that the cliques were, there were some factions that were starting to arise, and, there was a little conflict happening. And one of the students in my home base, who, his name's Junior, and I refer to him often, even he's graduated 2 years ago, and I still talk about him quite a bit. But he's one of those kids that, comes to our school and is not the most compliant kid. He's a kid who had a hard time building relationships with teachers and with staff. He didn't enjoy school. He had a lot of challenges that kind of prevented him from really being successful academically. But he stuck around, and we had a really strong relationship. And by that point on airband rehearsal day, and I'm sitting in the audience frustrated and basically in tears because I'm watching this thing unravel on stage. Junior rallied the home base to do this, to put this all together. He said, let's do it for Miss Leenerts. It's important for Miss Leenerts. And that, I think, to me, that moment, they all kind of came together and they did their silly dance, and it definitely was not the best one. We definitely did not win the airband competition, but it was a really sweet moment to see them all kind of rally around together in a community, to respect one another, to respect me, and to kind of, just really dig into the culture and really, just, jump in and have that fun as a community together.
I think it's a great example of kind of what O'Farrell's about. These are not perfect kids. We serve this community, and it's at times there's a lot of challenges in this community. Like I said, I grew up just 3 miles from here, and I know what it's like to not have, to live in a house where you can't pay rent, where you don't know where the next meal is going to come from, and there can be a lot of challenges. And so our kids, 90% of them come from within 3 miles of the school. But we try to build a place where every kid belongs. And that first place where every student belongs is home base. And so Junior, I know Junior very well. Spent a lot of time with Junior. Junior told me every year that he was not coming back to this school. I'm done, I'm not coming back. He was way too cool for this school. He was a very good soccer player. And we were a small pond for that big fish. But it was the relationships that he built in home base that kept him going. I honestly think if he left here, he probably would not have graduated. But his relationships that he built with Miss Leenerts and his other teachers kept him going. And his senior year, after all the grief he caused Miss Leenerts, he came to her defense.
A lot of grief.
He came to her defense, and I think that showed his growth. And that's what O'Farrell really is about. So the second part, after creating a structure that supports the mission and vision, the vision of the school, our second element would be awesome teachers. So Miss Leenerts was in the classroom just 2 years ago, and she would be a great example of awesome teachers. Because ultimately, the most important thing to a child's education is the quality of instruction in the classroom. And the most important thing to the quality of instruction in the classroom by far is the quality of the teacher. And I will say that we have the best group of teachers you're going to find anywhere. And so I get asked about that. And what do I do when I hire? Like everybody, you can only hire from the pool of people that apply. So that's where we start. But we do a couple of things. One is that we craft all of the interview questions for the position. And so your math questions look different than your English questions. I'm trying to get at things like, how will this person relate to and view kids? I care how they see kids. And so I try to have questions that get that out of them. Are they a nerd? Because I want nerds. I want people that nerd out in their subject. Because if they don't, then they're never going to push themselves and spend time watching documentaries and learning extra math stuff. And I want people who love their subject. And so I look for that when I hire. I try to ask questions so I can learn about their judgment. Because for me, trust is huge. And I have to see that they have solid judgment and decision-making so that they can be with these kids. We use scenarios to kind of bring some of that out. And the last thing is that we always have a teaching demonstration. So we'll do a meet and greet interview, a full panel interview, and then a teaching demo. And in that demo, ultimately, I have to see that they can teach. Because as I tell them, the job isn't to sit here and talk to me. The job is to teach kids. So I will not hire a teacher without watching them teach kids. And our students are used to it. Our students, this happens every year. And so we'll bring someone into their class and that person will take over and teach. And when that teacher leaves, one person takes it to the office and one of us stays in there and says, all right, what'd you guys think? And we have the kids give us feedback. And you can learn a lot from what students will say about teachers. Now, they're high schoolers. So we put it through that filter. I understand, not every word is the same as, an administrator on a panel, but it matters. It will necessary hiring as it takes to get the right person. I feel like that is the most important thing I do is hire. And so I put incredible amounts of energy and time into that. A few years back, actually, when we were still expanding the high school, I did an interview over Skype, I think it was. I don't do a ton of those. Like, I know this is what we're doing right now, but back then I didn't do a ton of those. And it was for a gentleman named Tom. And I had found him through his resumes. He was out in the desert teaching in Arizona. And I met with him, and as soon as I talked to him, I realized this was a guy I needed. We needed this at O'Farrell, and he taught really only gifted students, and because he was teaching AP classes to 8th graders, and this guy had so much knowledge, a history teacher, so much knowledge, and his vocabulary and the way he conducted himself. And I said, that's what we need. Our kids need this guy. And he came out, and I watched him do a teaching demonstration, and I knew he was exactly what we needed. Now, when he got in the classroom, he had a culture shock because we didn't have all gifted students. We have regular kids. And that first year, there were struggles for sure as he was trying to figure out how to work with these kids, but I knew he had the heart for it. And as he began to hear their stories and understand that, yeah, he could demand this, but he also had to support and understand and give grace to and figure out other ways of helping and reaching these students, he has become one of our absolute best teachers because he demands this from kids, but he will help them get there by scaffolding and supporting and loving and caring and going above and beyond for them. But he's a great example of the kind of teachers that we hire. They are rigorous and they hold a high standard, but they are full of love and compassion, will help students to reach that bar. And I do expect a lot of my teachers. I expect them to be professional. And that means at O'Farrell, you dress like a professional, you speak like a professional, you hold yourself in the way you act like a professional. It's important to me. My teachers don't cuss with kids. They don't do things that I know at other high schools happens. It's important to me that they're elevating students by their speech. And so they speak to students, I think Katy was saying this, speak to students like a peer more than a kid. Mm-hmm. They show them how to be a professional through how they dress and act. I expect them to be rigorous. I want them to be an expert in their content. I want them to continue to grow in their content. I expect them to be caring. I expect that they're going to have students' best interest at heart. And I expect that I can trust them. That I can trust them with students' well-being, their physical, mental, emotional needs, and with curriculum. I give my staff a lot of freedom when it comes to how they teach. I want teachers teaching to their strengths. And so nothing is cookie cutter here. Now, if you teach the same content as another teacher, if both of you teach biology, the same course, then I want your assessments to be aligned so that you can have conversations around how your students did on assessments. So that otherwise there's no value in that. But outside of those assessments, how you get there is up to you. And as long as I can see it's effective and it's working, awesome. So I try to give teachers as much room to teach to their strengths in the way that they want to and they think is best as much as possible. The last thing would be in that element would be professional development. We do a lot. Katy, what would you say is important about professional development at O'Farrell?
So I think the really kind of the most important piece of our professional development series and what we provide to teachers is just that it really is focused on teacher need. We do have a lot of kind of central strands, like curricular strands through our through our academic program. We are an avid national demonstration school, so that does kind of help guide some of the professional development that we do with our staff. But ultimately, it's focused on teacher need. We take in a lot of feedback from staff. We take a look at what's kind of in the moment, what is going to be most useful. And then also too, whenever we're planning, we're always planning with the intention of teachers getting a lot out of the professional development. So what is the content relevant and applicable? Is maybe the strategy that it's shared in, is that relevant and applicable to a classroom? So I just really think it's really teacher centered, and it's something that we dedicate a lot of time to as an administrative team.
I think what's really important there is Katy, who she was an avid teacher, she was an AP teacher, really pushed me, was that when we do professional development, just tell them good stuff, but the way in which we give it to them should be in good teaching strategies. I think we all remember being in college and being in classes where we were learning to be a teacher, and all the teacher would do was lecture at us for an hour and a half. And I always thought, you're telling us about good teaching strategies, but you're not using any of them. So when we do professional development, we will choose a teaching strategy that teacher can walk away with. And in the middle of it, we'll put on what we call our meta hat, and we'll talk about, okay, this thing we're doing is called this is what you're doing, this is why we're doing it this way. So there's now a teaching strategy or technique that teacher can then use in their classroom with whatever content they have. And that has actually been really, really cool and really successful. So it's not only the content, but the package that it comes in that are helpful to teachers, helping build them up and equip them and give them tools. So why are we successful? I think it's our structure. I think it's our teachers who are the absolute best. They're amazing and awesome. And lastly, I think it's because of our culture. We have a culture of excellence and a culture of belonging. On the excellence side, I demand a lot of my teachers. I demand excellence from them, and I'll give them all the support to get there. And just like that, we demand a lot of our students. We hold a very high academic bar. And this is part of what makes us different too, is I know that we teach students and serve students who come from a lot of difficult situations. And we know their stories. Through home base, we are so connected to them and their families. We know their stories, but we will not drop the bar. We will not lower the bar for anyone, because it is not doing them any favors by making things easier. Instead, we will help them reach that bar. We are constantly pushing kids into AP classes and advanced classes. Katy, do you remember what is our percentage of students in AP classes?
I think, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head right now.
We should have this like right at our fingertips, but I don't know. We're just trying.
I know. Well,
it's around 70% of our students take an AP class. I think it's a little above that. Take an AP class by the time they graduate. 75, I think. Yeah,
currently I believe we have about 40% of our students.
Currently in the moment, by the time they graduate, I think it's 70, 75% of the students take an AP class. So we're constantly demanding a lot of them. Because if these kids are just as important as any other kids, if they're like your own kids, then you want the best for them, and you are going to give them the best and demand the best. And so that's what we do. And it's amazing when people ask me about our students here, I always tell them, look, they go, how can you be all the success in this community that has never seen this kind of success? I tell them, well, there's nothing wrong with the kids in Southeast San Diego. There's never been anything wrong with the kids in Southeast San Diego. It's the adults in the system. We've created this system that doesn't work very well for all students. So there's nothing wrong with the kids. So why be surprised when so many kids are so successful when you create something that allows them to be? So we demand a lot. We have a culture of excellence academically, but also behavior-wise. We expect them to behave well. We have something called progressive discipline. And progressive discipline in our school, if you get in trouble in class, and let's say you were to get kicked out because you just could not, the teacher couldn't continue with you, you've lost your mind. In our system, you actually don't go back to the office, you go back to your home-based teacher. That person who loves you and cares for you and advocates for you and is your coach and cheerleader, you go back to that person that you love and respect and you go, oh. And that teacher goes, what are you doing? And it's the perfect person to talk to them about what's going on. But if it keeps happening and the student keeps getting kicked out of class or whatever the case may be, you move up in progressive discipline eventually to where you get suspended, but you're not going to continue to get the same consequence without it progressing. So we call it progressive discipline. And so there's a certainty to what's going to happen because each step is a little more severe, starting with a simple phone call home or detention and then moving up to suspension. Because of that, not many kids move up. Not many kids move up to suspension because they know what's coming next. And each time they're talking to their home-based teacher, each time we're talking to parents. But we expect a lot from our students. We have a uniform, which I know a lot of schools can't have a uniform. We do. And we expect them to pay attention to details, have their shirt tucked in, all the things. Ultimately, we have a philosophy that we adopted from another school called sweat the small stuff. And it applies to the uniform, applies to discipline, it applies to classroom management. Sweat the small stuff. Because if you do, you don't get to as much of the big stuff. So in your class, if you are sweating the small stuff when it comes to the way students talk to each other and talk to the teacher, and you won't let a student call another student stupid, well then what are the chances that they're gonna like drop an F-bomb in class and call a kid a really rough word or say something really raw and wrong to another kid? We sweat the small stuff. Because of that, in the last 10 years, I have not had a student say F you to a teacher. They don't curse at teachers, ever. That's not who we are. It's not part of our culture. We don't let them call another student stupid. So we don't get to the big things. It's holding them accountable. We also honor and celebrate their success. We believe in that. I think it's important. On our honor roll system, we have levels from cum laude to magna cum laude and summa cum laude, and that is reflected in graduation. If you have a high enough GPA, you get a gold stole. If you have a high enough GPA, you get a white gown. I think it's important to celebrate their success and honor achievement, and so we do.
Also, one thing to add on to that as well, kind of to tie back to our vision statement, we do spend a lot of time on character development, and one kind of central piece of our program here is the Falcon Way. And so every letter in Falcon stands for something, but F is focus, A is attitude, L is leadership, C is citizenship, O is organization, and N is nonviolence. And at the end of the school year, we also honor students that we identify as our Falcons of the Year. And so there's one student who's kind of the overall Falcon. They exhibit all of those qualities. And then we also give awards too for the student who's the most exemplary with their focus or their attitude or leadership. And so also to just really celebrating not just academic achievement, but also, their, strength of character and the example that they set on our school campus.
Thank you. That's super important, the Falcon Way. In fact, the Falcon of the Year is the student that we believe is a role model for all their students, and they exhibit all the elements of the Falcon Way. Academics is actually not even in the Falcon Way. Like, it's super important to us, but when it comes to the Falcon Way, the focus, organization. Wait, attitude. I don't know how to spell Falcon. Focus, attitude, leadership, citizenship, organization, nonviolence. The student, we think, exhibits all of those things the most. That senior is recognized as Falcon of the Year. It's a big deal here. And their name gets on a plaque and they're put in the office and they're allowed to come back to campus anytime they want. They're the only one because our kids are so attached to us, they come back all the time at highly inappropriate times and want to walk into classes. And no, I feel bad. I'm like, no, you can't. You got to make an appointment and email your teacher. And that's part of the relationships they have with us. But the Falcon of the Year, they get to come back whenever they want. But they're really good students in their own college, so it works out pretty well. I'll describe a little bit of what it looks like in a classroom. I'm going to ask Giuseppe here to share a little bit about what kind of classroom culture looks like. Giuseppe.
Hi, my name is Mr. Basil, and I'm an integrated Math 1 teacher here at Untitled Charter School. Mr. Rainey asked me to speak about the classroom culture that happens in my classroom. It's all based, for me, about 2 rules that I have for myself. When students walk in that door, I want them to know that this is a safe place for them. They're here to learn, and math I know can be challenging for students. And so I want the students to realize that, you know what, math is difficult. Nobody's going to laugh at you in here. Nobody's going to make fun of you for not knowing an answer. All that I care about is that if you give me effort, you're going to be okay. And so students have to realize that this is a safe place for them. And so it's my job to help them take their guard down. The second one is I want students to know that I care about them. I don't care about them as just a student. I care about them as a person. They're not just a student in a desk. They matter in this classroom. And so in order to do that, there's a lot of things that I do in my classroom to build that culture. And one of them is I take about a handful of minutes, 5 minutes at the beginning of each class. So it kind of cuts down my classroom time. And I ask them a personal story. I want a personal question. I want them to share their favorite candy bar. What are they doing over the weekend? And we'll all go around the class and we'll answer that question. And that way students realize that I want to know more about them than just, do you know how to solve this equation in my class? And so they realize that this is, by doing that, it also creates that safe place. And students can come back to that and realize, okay, Mr. Basil cares about me. And I can buy into his classroom, in a subject that I've struggled with my entire life. And so when I'm thinking of that, one story that comes to mind is I had the student Juan, who I had met a couple times through summer school when I had subbed for summer school. I met him 2 years in a row. He was doing math at summer school. And so he came up his first day of freshman year, and he came into my class and just seeing, he was like, I know you, you were my summer school substitute. I was like, yes, I was, Juan, and I do remember you. But through this interaction with Juan, about halfway through the first semester of just asking questions, I asked what he was doing, and he told me he was going to the desert to go race dune buggies, and it blew me away. And the rest of us, the rest of the class, I didn't know more about it. What, you race dune buggies? And so we kind of expanded on that. And so the next week we had the same question, on next day of class, actually, the Monday following. So Juan, how was the desert? Oh, it was awesome, Mr. Basil. And he went on about how the dune buggy was so much fun and what he was doing with his brothers and his family. And it was really cool because that was the first time that I had really seen Juan open up in a math classroom. And after that, Juan tried, and his math grade and effort got better, and his understanding got better. And it was really cool. And it was cool to see that because it was based around his effort and buying in the class, because he realized that I cared about him as a person. And so at the end of the school year, Juan came to me and said, thank you, Mr. Basil. And I asked him, what are you thanking me for? Man, you worked hard for your grade. You did it. And he said, thanks, because it's the first time in 3 years that I didn't have to go to summer school for my math. And I attribute that to the classroom culture that I build is why Juan was successful in my math class.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Yeah, I think he said it well. Giuseppe's an amazing teacher, and he works really well with a lot of struggling math students, particularly boys that struggle. Anyway, he does a fantastic job. He has great school culture. We're all in remote learning right now, so he's sitting in an empty classroom, but normally he just has a lively class of kids that were respectful to each other and him. And he turns so many kids around in math. He's a big part of why we have the math scores that we do. And so There's more. We could go on and on. There's a book called Boys in Crisis. Is that a big part of what we do? And but in the end, I think those three elements are probably good enough. We're proud of the success that we've had because it validates our efforts, but more importantly, it means good things for the community that we serve. This community deserves a school that has amazing teachers, an amazing program, and kids line up to get into it. That's where I want to send my kids. That's where I did send my kid who graduated 2 years ago. So what's our answer to how we've been successful? I do think it's our structure, our teachers, and our culture. Our structure is designed to fulfill our vision. It helps our teachers to be the best that they can be. And because of that, we've developed a culture that expects students to excel and lets them know that they belong. They have a home, and there's people that love and care for them. So hopefully there's something in here that sparks an idea for you or validates something that you're doing. Thank you for watching and spending time with us. And so from myself and Katy.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed our chat.
Wow, thank you. Truly impressive and inspiring. Please let the audience and myself know when you bottled some of that secret sauce. We'd like to know where we can get some of that. Speaking of your secret sauce, we have so many questions here in the queue. I'll start with the first one. Can you explain more about why your home base is so important to your school success? You referred to it, for example, as part of your secret sauce.
I do. Home base is the foundation of everything we do. In the beginning, when I was talking about, it was, by the way, horrible to watch myself on that video. Anyway, so home base is the foundation for everything, because if you're going to say, and a lot of schools do talk about relationships being important, whatever you say is important, whatever's in your vision statement, you need to create the space and the system for it. And so for us, that's home base. That's where the relationships get to be made. We do everything through there. The airband competitions are through home base. The dodgeball tournaments through home base. So home base is a program. It is the system by which we create the space for the relationships to happen. At least the most important and deep relationships that teachers and students have.
Awesome.
Katy, what would you say, Katy?
I think also too, a lot of pieces of home base, it's not just the relationship that the teacher has with the student, but it also too is the relationship that the teacher has with the family. We still do conferences at the beginning of every school year. And I know that can be something that's maybe not super common at the high school level, but it's a way that we stay connected to the community. And we really do build a partnership between, between home and school, and the expectations that we have for students at school are clear to parents at home, and parents know that they have a person to reach out to. So really it becomes a team supporting the student all the way through their high school experience.
Thank you. And if I may, before I get to the next question for the audience, I'd like to briefly tie in that approach with the research to see if this is more or less on point. It would appear, generally speaking, not just at your school, but across the country, students who live every day with risk factors at home, be it, poverty, be it constant exposure to substance abuse, when they live with these risk factors, they tend to disengage, not just from school and life. So one of the approaches, according to research, is when you establish a strong relationship with at least one staff member, it really helps to form a psychological sense of belonging with that school. That, in turn, taps into that innate resiliency that students have. And without those types of relationships, a lot of students, like a blade of grass, they never pop back up. And so those relationships are critical, because you help a lot of these kids pop right back up when times are tough at home.
Well,
So,
and I would say, Jose, to jump on that is absolutely that a concept of you want one adult to know every kid on your campus. Absolutely. I think our home base structure takes it a step further and says, not only will one adult know you and know you and your family well, but will be responsible for you. So that person will be tracking your grades. They'll be checking on you social emotionally. They'll be the point of contact. So they're going to be responsible. If you get in trouble, that person's the one that's going to hand out the discipline. So you're accountable to that person. So I think that's the piece where it brings it to a whole new level. It's not just that they know them, they're responsible. They carry their home-based teacher's name everywhere they go.
yes.
In fact, kids will wear t-shirts because we have a uniform, but on Wednesdays you can wear spirit shirts. Kids wear t-shirts with their home-based teacher's name on them, sometimes their face on them. So that's that extra piece of you are also responsible for these kids, and it creates a different kind of relationship.
Absolutely. And I bet as a result of that, students are more apt to validate any discipline that comes their way, because that actually speaks to the next question, or two or three that are specifically related to that. So next question, what happens if for whatever reason, a student and teacher truly are not getting along? Is it possible for students to change to a teacher who is a better fit?
That's a great question. Katie, what do you think?
So it is extremely rare that we have that happen. I can think of maybe 3 students in the time I've been at O'Farrell where there's actually been a home-based switch. I think this goes back to something that Mr. Rainey spoke about in the video, is that hiring is something that we put a lot of value in at O'Farrell. And we're not just looking for the academic expert in the classroom, we're also looking for somebody who likes kids and loves kids, loves being around kids, loves working at a school. And that's not just the teacher, that's, our amazing support staff in the office, or our custodial staff. These are people who care about kids. And so, yeah, naturally there's going to be some conflict. But I think even if the kid is not connecting super well with the home-based teacher, the culture the culture that teachers and students have with each other at O'Farrell is that if they're not connecting with the home-based teacher, they might be really connecting with their math teacher. Mr. Basil had connections with so many of his IM1 students, and also great connections with his home base. And so it's not something that we take personally. I had kids in my home base who we didn't connect as well as I did connect with others, but if they had a trusted adult on campus and could make that connection with them too, then, they felt supported and taken care of. So to kind of answer that, I know that was a really long explanation, but it's rare. And I think it's because our teachers overall, there's a kind of a teacher for every kid, and there's a niche that we can all fill to support the need.
And home-based teachers take like a parental role with their kids. In a sense. So it's kind of like asking, if you don't get along with one of your own children, do you get to get rid of them? And I have 4 myself, and there are probably moments when I would like to have switched with others, but no, they're your kids.
Yep. Great. All right. Next question here in the queue. Is home base the first period class of the day? How long is that class? How many students are in that cohort? It sounds wonderful.
It is the first class of the day. It's super important. It's the first class of the day because, number one, if they come in with problems, you're likely to find out because you're their home-based teacher. You know them the best. So a kid comes into your class, they're upset. Home-based teacher is going to realize it. That's not normally how Jose acts. Walks over there, hey, what's going on? They're the most likely the person that's going to tell them to confide in that trusted adult to say, I got kicked out of my house last night. Oh, okay. I know what I need to do. I need to get you this resource. I need to send you to the account. I need to do these things. I'm going to tell your other teachers to be careful today. You're not in a good, their brain's moving. They're the right person to do it. It needs to be the first period of the day. It's 25 minutes. It does extend the day a little bit, but it is absolutely worth it. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next question, also somewhat related to home base, and that is the following. The San Diego Unified School District is focusing on equity and many schools are focusing specifically on our Black male students in terms of grades and suspensions, as well as expulsions. I work at a middle school. How have you addressed that at your school, O'Farrell?
So that it's great that people are focused on African American male students and outcomes. They should. It's not that they're more important than any other group, but at least nationally, the outcomes for that group are not good, and so we should. For us, we don't have a program that especially targets any one demographic group. And our program is there because it's good for kids. And one of the things that you find out when you work with kids of color is that they're just kids. They're just like you were when you were a kid. They we're all human beings. And so we don't necessarily have a special approach there. All the things we do, I think, are good for kids. I think particularly we're in an area that's low income. And like I mentioned in the video, I know what that's like. And so we do things to fill in gaps for them. But that has to do with their economic status more than anything.
I think also too, just to add to that, I think again, this is where home base fits in really well, is that every kid does have an advocate on our campus. We're a small campus. We only have right now 570 high schoolers. Our home bases are about 25 to 30 students, depending on the grade level. So you do have somebody who really knows the student well in a lot of different ways. And can go to bat for a kid and say, maybe a student had there was something that really, tough. They're dealing with something really challenging. And then, there's an incident that happens at school. How does that factor in kind of to how we approach the individual student? There's more eyes on it than just the kid did this thing. This is what happens to the student.
And I think in there, it's important that I think there's a danger sometimes when you zero in so much on a demographic group that you begin to really pigeonhole that demographic group. Well, then African-American male students are like this. And there's a real danger in that, because at O'Farrell, we let kids be whoever they are. It's an important part of what we do. I have Black students that ride skateboards and listen to heavy metal. I've got Black students that do things that you might not think are typical. Does your school have a space for them to be who they are? Instead of saying, well, you're like this, you must like these things and do these things. And our school's really different in that sense of you can be whoever it is that you are, and you don't need to fit any kind of specific demographic stereotype.
Thank you. And another question very much related to that. What role do the home-based teachers play in communication with parents? You mentioned it briefly in your video, but as an example, are they expected to meet regularly with the families or parents, or is that the administration's role?
They are the number one point of contact for parents. So all the information we give will go through home base. Katy was a home-based teacher until just a couple of years ago. How would you respond to that, Katy?
So I think really kind of going back to what we said the role of the home-based teacher is, one of the responsibilities as a home-based teacher is that you are tracking where students are on we have a plan called progressive discipline. So students, they earn a consequence, and then they have a certain amount of time to wait before that consequence kind of drops back down to something less severe. But if they keep racking things up, then they're going to go higher and higher up on those consequence levels. So that's something that the home-based teacher tracks. As far so if a student does have an issue in a class, they receive some kind of referral from a teacher, then I'm going to be communicating to the teacher saying, hey, the kiddo is on detention, can you contact home? Usually too, it's, I'm that person. If you've got any questions, I will often follow up with students who are receiving a lot of consequences, follow up with the family, just say, hey, how's everything going? Is there anything you need? So I really do see in that piece there, that's kind of where the home-based teacher is playing a role in discipline.
Thank you. And the next question, you've partially answered it, maybe half of it, but I'm going to ask anyway out of respect for the audience. And the question is, my impression is that home base is far more than homeroom. It seems that home base is a mechanism for creating a sense of family. How are home-based teachers expected to serve as advocates for their students? And again, I think you've addressed it significantly, but I don't know if there's more to that you would like to.
So thank you, Jose. When I hire, we talk a lot about home base because it's so important what we do here. And when we ask questions about it, we say, this is what it's like. Do you have any questions? And everybody always says, oh yeah. I had an advisory. I know all about that. And I'm like, no, you don't know about that. It is way more than an advisory class. Advisory might be a point of contact. You might use it for certain things. This is the heart of creating a culture where students belong. They belong somewhere. They may feel awkward. They may feel like, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at English. I'm not good at all these things, but they belong in their home base they often will say their home base brothers and sisters. They'll often call their home base teacher their mom or dad. They belong there, and it helps them belong to school as a whole. We have an average attendance rate of 98% every day. Kids want to be here in a community where there's a lot of difficulties and struggles for kids. So yeah.
And that includes teenagers, high school students.
This is only high school I'm talking about.
Right,
yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying is that's impressive with teenagers. That's something that I wanted to just repeat for the audience.
Yeah. No, they keep coming back. They won't go away. Like they graduate and they just keep coming back. And so the really good ones, I hire them, and now they do all kinds of stuff. But yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Another question related to that. What kinds of discussions and activities happen with home-based time? You've talked about this a bit, but I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katy.
Yeah, so I can actually jump into that. So home base, we have a kind of a curricular program that we follow. So Mondays, and also too, this ties into our being an AVID national demonstration school. A lot of what we do with home base is rooted in AVID and AVID's philosophies about the importance of building strong relationship to, high support, high expectations, and you get success. So our Mondays, we do organization checks, binder checks, right now, probably Google Drive cleanups and things like that. We'll have home-based lessons on Tuesdays. Our counselors have also been doing some push-in, especially in distance learning, doing some social emotional support and lessons those ways. Teacher choice. We have a college and career focused day, and then there's a day too with just to kind of talk about grades and where kids are at and what support that they need for the week. So that's one kind of piece to it. That's an expectation that kids have when they come into home base. But it can kind of morph and take direction too, depending on what the kids need and what teachers are able to give.
Yeah, I think one of the best things is you can be responsive to what's going on in the school. So if there was an incident at the school recently, the home-based teacher can take a chance and take that teachable moment and let's talk about this X problem, or let's talk about why. For us, you have a uniform that we wear 4 days a week, and on Fridays, if they're doing all the things they're supposed to, they get free dress. So they get to wear that outfit that they've been planning to wear all week, which works really well because for a lot of our students, they only have one good outfit. And so they wear it, and they wear it every Friday. But for them, they value that so much that when they leave too much trash, or God forbid there's a fight, we do tend to about one a year. There's some kid who can't take it. But then they lose that free dress. And so they'll talk about it in home base. Well, why did we lose free dress? Well, because what could you have done? Didn't you hear he was upset with her and da. And so they can have those conversations about real life or the problems that are going on at school, the things that are happening in the real world around them. And they can use those for these teachable moments in home base. I think it's one of the more powerful things they can do with kids they have good relationships with.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have approximately 5 minutes left for our Q&A session because I want to make sure that everyone has enough time to get to their next session. So I will try to squeeze in a few more questions. Next one. You mentioned Boys in Crisis. Are there any other books that have been important to you or school and have influenced your school success?
So I would think of maybe 4. So the first one is on a big scope level is the book Good to Great. which is looking at taking good organizations that have turned into great organizations with really good outcomes, the types of things they do, was essential for transforming our school. Because a long time ago, we were just a middle school and we were one of the worst performing schools in San Diego. So transforming to one of the highest performing schools in San Diego, that book, Good to Great, was a big part of on the administrative level, the principles in there that we used. Boys in Crisis, it's out of print and you can find it on Amazon, but it is the principles in there about understanding the male brain and how it develops, and that realizing everybody's on a pendulum with, where their brain is, but boys on a whole develop very differently than girls. And that evidence for that has just grown and grown and grown as they've done a lot of neural research over the years. But it will help, particularly female instructors who often don't understand the male brain very well, and strip the things from their classroom that help the male brain. Things that you strip away, competition that helps the male brain. You put stuff all over your classroom that hurts the male brain. I can't find the things I'm looking for. There's all of this research back there, and Boys in Crisis really can help with that, particularly conflict with boys, and especially if they're in middle school, transformed our middle school. When you talk to a boy who's going through a crisis, he's having a problem, and there are things you can do to de-escalate and things that everything else is going to escalate it. So anyway, Boys in Crisis is super important. One of the big things for our high school is the Strength Finder books. They are huge and have really changed the way I look at the way we schedule, the fact that every kid absolutely will have an elective in our high school. I get pressure all the time to fill that elective with an EL class or make them do an extra math class. I will not do it because kids have to find what they're good at. And once they do, that helps them buy into school, and it raises their grades, it improves their attendance. But so Strength Finder, there's a ton of books, they're all tons of research. Strength Finder. The last one would probably be Teach Like a Champ, okay, which is a simple book of tons and tons of teaching techniques that you can implement in your teaching. They're not big strategies, but they're little techniques that the author found by going to the best high schools and elementary and middle schools and saying, what do these teachers do that helps them be so effective? And noticed a number of things that all these teachers were doing, and so made a book out of it. Teach Like a Champ is the best, in my opinion, teaching book in existence. We use it for our new teachers. We refer to the techniques in there. Fantastic book, Teach Like a Champ.
Thank you so much. We have time for one more. Let's see if we can squeeze it in 2 minutes. Can you elaborate on your progressive discipline policy? I know you mentioned that they go to their home base teacher first, but what are the next steps beyond that?
So in a nutshell, progressive discipline is, instead of the idea that when you get in trouble, you get the same consequence every time until somebody's fed up with you and you get suspended, it is progressive. So the first time you get in trouble in a class, you're going to get a warning. And so we have a warning procedure. But then when it gets to an actual written documentation piece, you're going to get, your home-based teacher is going to give you a detention. And then if you get in trouble again, it's going to be a longer detention. If you get in trouble again, it's going to be Friday. We call it Friday night school. So it's detention at the end of the day, Friday. If you get in trouble again, then it's going to be, you're going to spend a whole day with your home-based teacher sitting in the back of their class. You don't get to go to in your class. You get in trouble again, you're going to come on a Saturday. And then if you get in trouble again, you're going to get suspended. And what it basically is, it's progressive. It says that you can't keep doing the things that you're doing because of that. And on every step, every kid knows what the next step is. That certainty keeps most kids from ever going above detention. And so we have very few suspensions. And I haven't expelled the kid in 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, probably more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We have so many questions. I wish we had time for more. For the audience, we do apologize that we were unable to get to all of your questions, but if you are willing to email your questions to the INCUS website, we will make certain to get these to the O'Farrell Charter School. Simultaneously, we know that you are not able to attend all of the sessions, and maybe you have some colleagues that wanted to attend today's session, but for whatever reason was unable to. Please know that all of these sessions are recorded. You can view them on the Attendee Hub on Q, and eventually they will be uploaded onto our NCUS website as well. In addition to that, we also want you to know that your feedback is quite important to all of our presentations. And so you're going to be emailed a form for that. And you don't have to complete more than one form because all of the sessions are listed on that one form. So you can just check off whatever session you attended. As an incentive, if you're willing to complete that and submit it by Monday, you will be eligible for a $200 Visa gift certificate card. So hopefully that's enough of an incentive. And before we say our final thank you to the O'Farrell Charter School team, I simply wanted to remind you of one important takeaway. And that is that this presentation demonstrates, not just this one, but all of the others demonstrate that the zip code in which your school is located or the demographic composition of your families do not dictate student achievement, and they certainly do not preclude equitable and excellent results. For example, Brian didn't get into it quite in detail, but just as an example, his school is approximately 2,000 students, over half of which are Hispanic Latino, 15% African American, approximately 15% Filipino. And then in addition to that, or beyond that, 70% approximately are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Nearly 20% are English learners, and nearly 10% have exceptional learning needs. So it's just a way to contextualize the accomplishments that have been discussed during today's presentation. So with that, we want to say once again, Brian and Katy, thank you so much for your time today. It was truly, or is truly, not was, it continues to be truly inspiring for us. And is there anything else you would like to say to the audience rather before we close?
I'm happy to interact with anybody or correspond with anybody that wants. We've learned so much from the other schools around us as we transformed and became the school we are, that I'm still learning. In fact, I was in a session earlier with a gentleman, and we're going to be connecting because I want to learn from him. And I'm happy to share, anything that's helpful to anyone.
Absolutely. Great.
Yeah, likewise. It's just been a pleasure to, I've worn a lot of different hats, but I think there's so much that we can do and so much that we can learn from others. And so just really appreciate being able to share, but also to, being able to interact with some other presentations at this wonderful symposium.
Great. And since we have 30 seconds here, one question that was asked earlier, but I couldn't get to it, but I'll squeeze it in here. If I live in another state and I can arrange to go out and visit your school, how would I go about doing that? Is that possible?
100%. Yep. Just email me. We can absolutely set it up. We've hosted lots of folks between being an NCUS school and being an avid national demonstration school. We've had people from around the country come, and so we're more than happy to help. Yeah.
Great. All right. With that, once again, folks in the audience, you have approximately 15 minutes to get into the next session. So you have plenty of time. If you're not certain which one you want to attend, don't forget, go back to the main session. And you will have a list of all of the sessions. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Oh, we can jump out. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. You guys did a great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian and Katy.